Good evening, everybody. Welcome to BizStarts, Two Rivers. My name is Todd Dilson, and I'm one of the co-founders for Two Rivers BizStarts. This is the other co-founder in the back, Noel Wilson. We're really excited to see you all here tonight. This is our first, I'd say, audience-specific kind of event for entrepreneurs. In this particular case, we're really pleased to welcome you as veterans and to have our special guest tonight, Saul Newton, who is the director of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce. Did I get that right? Or is he the first? Okay, excellent. The purpose for BizStarts is really around trying to establish more of a hunger or a curiosity around getting businesses started in the Two Rivers and area in Manitowoc County. There really are a lot of resources here locally, ranging from some of the local chambers, the Two Rivers Business Association, Progress Lakeshore, but more broadly, there are a lot of organizations across the state that support anybody that wants to start up a business. Things ranging from training and legal services to getting a loan, to getting your business off the ground, and in particular for groups like this, to be able to come together on a monthly basis and get support from other people that are trying to start a business and do something for themselves. So we're excited to be able to offer these kinds of resources for free through the Leicester Public Library. That's our host for the program. And come together and have an opportunity for people to share what they're working on, what they care about, what kinds of businesses they're trying to start, and really to re-enliven that sense of building things and making things right here at Two Rivers. I'm a fairly recent transplant to the area. My wife and I have been here for just a little bit over a year, but we really fell in love with the area. It's just a great place to live and to meet people, and everybody is extremely friendly and nice around here. So we've had nothing but a great experience in getting this group off the ground and getting it started. We've been running for about 6-7 months now. We started just over the summer, and it's just nice to see the turnout growing and growing on a month-by-month basis. So if you haven't found us online, if you only found us through maybe an email newsletter from the Leicester Public Library, or you heard about it through another source like one of the posts, you can join up and get notifications of any of our meetings by going to tworiversbizstarts.com. That'll take you to our meetup group. And all you need to do is set up an account, and you'll get emails for any of our upcoming events that we have. And as usual, when we do these events, we have flyers from all of our past events, so any kind of resources that we had, we try to keep copies on hand for any of those items, and especially a lot of things that the public library has for people that are thinking about starting up a business. So of those of you who are here tonight, how many of you have been to a prior event? Awesome. So it's nice to see a couple of returning faces. Hi, Eric. Nice to see you. I want to get right to Saul right away. The only other housekeeping thing is if you didn't sign in when you came in the door, if you would, just so we can kind of keep a tally of who's attended, if you wouldn't mind just signing up front here before you take off for the evening. There's free coffee and cookies in the back from Nikki's Good Eats. If you haven't been there, they've got some awesome food and bakery. Give them a little plug. And we would love to see you at future meetings. Our next meeting is November the 28th, and we'll have Peter Wills from Progress Lakeshore talking about what kind of resources they have to offer for the community as well. So with that, I am going to go ahead and switch gears here, and I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome Saul Newton, who came to us from referral from Darla LeClaire, who's filming this tonight. So that we can put some clips up online as well and go from there. I guess turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good.
Saul, I don't know if you want to need this, but
I can talk about it.
Yeah, I know you're fighting a little bit of a bug there. So,
all right. I promise normally I'm a much more dynamic speaker, but I'm kind of fighting off a cold. So if you'll forgive me. So as Todd mentioned, my name is Saul Newton. I'm the founder and executive director of the Wisconsin Veterans Chamber of Commerce. I had the pleasure of meeting Darla almost a year ago at one of our events in southeastern Wisconsin. and have since been back to this area a couple of times, and have really gotten to know a lot of the resource organizations and other business resources that are available in northeastern Wisconsin. And there's quite a bit of them. But the Veterans Chamber is really proud to be included in those and to be on hand to offer veteran-owned and veteran-friendly businesses the support and resources that we have to offer. So I guess I'm here tonight first to kind of share a little bit of my story with all of you, tell you about our organization, what we do, why we do what we do, but also to get to know you guys a little bit. I'm not going to talk for a long time. I'd much rather save some time for you guys to ask any questions that you might have or share some of your stories. So I tend to be much more conversational in these types of things. So if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts or anything, just feel free to shout them out. I think we've got about an hour and a half, give or take. Ish, yeah. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from suburban Milwaukee. I grew up in Waukesha. I went to college at UW-Stevens Point. About halfway through my college career, through a combination of different things, I found myself in a position where I needed resources to go to college. Turns out college is pretty expensive. And I looked and saw that the military might be a good option for me. No one in my family had ever served in the military before, but it was something that I was personally looking for and offered some opportunities and resources that I was looking for. And so in 2009, I enlisted in the Army as an infantryman. Within 3 months of getting out of boot camp, I was in Kandahar, Afghanistan, where I spent 13 months. The rest of the time I was stationed with the 4th Infantry Division in Fort Carson, Colorado. I ended up, I'd intended to stay in for much longer, but just as I was coming up for re-enlistment, I blew out my knee, and that pretty much answered the re-enlistment question right away. So 3.5 years later, I was back here in Wisconsin. And I did what a lot of today's generation of veterans do once they get out of the military, which is I went back to school. And I dedicated myself to that. A couple of years after going back to school, I started looking around and seeing, well, what do I want to do next? What do I want to actually do with my life? And I was doing the things that you do when you're transitioning into the professional world. I was trying to network with people. I was trying to reach out to folks that I hadn't talked to in 5, 6, 8, 10 years, just to reestablish those kind of connections and say, hey, I'm looking for a job, or I'm looking for internships, or I'm looking for resources out there. And through a very weird, kind of unique confluence of events, I looked around and said, wouldn't it be great if there was an organization that was dedicated to supporting veterans in a professional sense? There are a lot of fantastic organizations that serve veterans, for their health and wellness needs, for their social needs. There's veteran service organizations like the American Legion and VFW and DAV and all the rest of them that I'm proud to be a member of. But there wasn't really an organization that focused on the business and kind of professional development side of things. And so, being the industrious 27-year-old at that point that I was, I decided to start one. And so, in September of 2015, I put out a press release that said we're going to have a happy hour at a bar in Milwaukee, and had just over a dozen people attend that. Roughly half of them were directly related to me, so I counted it as a win, and just kind of kept plugging away. And here we are 3 years later, and we have 250 members across the state. We've served thousands of veterans. We host just over 50 events per year. We have 21 different programs that we offer to support businesses and nonprofit organizations. But what I'm probably most proud of is that we're one of the first states in the country to have an organization like this. I was really surprised. I'm a very analytical and kind of data-driven person. I like to understand kind of the statistics behind things. And so when I started looking at an organization like this, I did a lot of research, and what I found out was that after World War II, more than half of all veterans went on to start their own business. Military veterans literally created the American middle class. And that increased rate of entrepreneurship remains to this day. Today's veterans are more than twice as likely to start a business as non-veterans are. And despite that, there are very few resources out there specifically dedicated to serving military veterans, military family members, and addressing some of the unique challenges that veteran entrepreneurs face. And so our model of an organization is really a combination of things. First, our top priority is to support veteran-owned businesses and help them create and sustain and operate businesses over the long term. As I said, veterans remain one of the most entrepreneurial demographics in America. The flip side of that is that veteran-owned businesses also struggle more than non-veteran-owned businesses. Over a 10-year period, all businesses, both civilian and veteran-owned, are 75% of them will not survive longer than 10 years. For veteran-owned businesses, that number is 93%. We don't really know where in the life cycle of the business that drop-off is happening, but we know that veterans especially struggle with two areas. The first is technical knowledge of how to own and operate a business. I always like to joke with folks that QuickBooks isn't really covered in basic training. So when a veteran decides to start a business, there's some just kind of basic foundational knowledge of how do you write a business plan? What are some of the nuts and bolts things that folks need to know? It's great to have a passion about a product or a trade or a service that you have a particular attraction to, but if you don't know how to do the things like keep your books or market your business or attract customers or understand the landscape of your local business community, it's going to be a real struggle for you to succeed. The second area where veterans really struggle is access to capital. As I'm sure all of you know, it's not easy to start a business. And for veterans particularly, as a transient population, that when you're serving in the military, you're not really building up personal assets, you're not really building up wealth. I'm sure all of you can relate when I say that the military isn't really a high-paying gig. You're not really building up those things that you can then leverage for things like a small business loan. You're also not establishing a financial network that you can turn to for things like investors or venture capital or startup capital or things like that. And so our purpose as an organization is to fill in some of those holes. First, to take stock and say, where are the resources that are available? How can we connect our population with those resources that are available? Things like SBA loans, things like venture capital and investment firms who are looking to invest in businesses, technical resources like BizStarts and SBDCs and other business organizations. But then where there are gaps, where can we fill in some of those gaps? And that's where our programming comes in. But we also recognize that veterans are far more ingrained in the economy than solely through business ownership. And so we have roughly about a third of our business members that we call veteran-friendly businesses. Those are businesses that maybe they're owned by a military family member. Maybe they're just supportive of veterans and want to show their support. Or maybe they're looking to grow their customer base by marketing their products and services to veterans and military families as consumers. And so we put together programs and resources to help them do exactly that. The other area that we see a lot of interest from is in hiring military veterans. Today's generation of veterans have a real luxury and something that is unique from previous generations, in that employers are actively searching for veterans to hire. Previous generations of veterans have done a lot of work to make sure that our culture recognizes the value that veterans bring to the table. The skills and training and qualities that are instilled in the military are now appreciated in a way that previous generations haven't had that luxury of being. And so now we're seeing employers who are saying, we want to hire these folks that come highly skilled, highly trained, with all of these soft skills like being polite and being able to show up on time, wearing the right uniform, and all of these things that are kind of second nature to those of us who serve in the military. So we work with employers to help them create and implement recruitment and retention campaigns for workforce development. Finally, our focus area, our kind of third leg of the stool, so to speak, is working with nonprofit organizations. We want to see the business community as a whole, both veteran as well as civilian-owned, be more involved with the veterans community. We have literally thousands of nonprofit and community organizations across the state who are serving veterans every single day and providing them with necessary and valuable resources and services. And we want to see our business members and our business community support those efforts. And so we act as kind of a bridge, a connection point, a nexus point, however you want to phrase that, to connect the business community as a whole with nonprofit organizations across the state who are serving veterans in any capacity, whether that's health and wellness, whether that's employment and professional development, whether that's community engagement. We want to see the business community be an active partner in those efforts. And so that's kind of a very brief overview of what we do as an organization. I guess I'm kind of here in two capacities. One, to tell you about this organization that I'm very proud to lead, but the other is to share my experience. Even though my experience is starting a nonprofit and not a business, I still consider myself a quasi-entrepreneur, maybe an honorary entrepreneur, if you'll allow me. Our focus as an organization isn't on making money or making a profit, it's fulfilling our mission. But we still operate the same way that a business does every single day. I still have books I need to rectify, I still have marketing and a customer base, if you will, that I need to attract. And so my personal experience as an entrepreneur, one of the best things I think that entrepreneurs can do is connect with one another and learn from them, learn from one another, learn from the mistakes, learn from the best practices. One of the fundamental roles that we play as an organization is really building an ecosystem, of partners and members and just individuals across the state who are all committed to the success of each other. So that's kind of the role that we play as an organization. I can talk about the role that veterans play in the state of Wisconsin. I can talk about what we do. But if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this, it's the value of being connected to people around you, to folks, to other entrepreneurs, to other business owners, to your community. That's, in my experience, the biggest determination between success and failure, is if you have relationships and you have connections to folks who can be a resource and be helpful and be supportive to you, that's really going to make all the difference in the world. So I guess to kind of take a step back, does anyone want to take a guess at how many businesses across the state of Wisconsin right now are owned by military veterans? Anyone want to throw out some numbers?
300.
300. Higher.
3,000.
3,000. Higher.
Kidding.
7,000.
7,000. Higher. 15. Higher.
25,000.
25,000. Higher.
50,000?
50,000. Higher. The answer is 65,000. 65,000 Wisconsin businesses are owned by military veterans. Those businesses bring in over $29 billion a year in revenue. They employ nearly 150,000 Wisconsinites. And so what we've done as an organization is fundamentally draw attention to that and get people to recognize that veterans are important parts of our local and our regional and our state economy in ways that a lot of folks didn't even recognize. And we're starting to draw attention to veterans who are starting businesses and established businesses that are recognizable in every single part of the state, and folks don't know that they're veteran owned. Who here has heard of Leinenkugels?
What?
Leinenkugels.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Beer.
The entire Leinenkugels family are Marine Corps veterans.
Pretty successal because of me.
Actually, yeah.
Did you drink it?
Yeah.
They don't make PBR.
One of my favorite stories that I like to tell is about Don Weber. Has anyone here heard of Don Weber? Logistics Health Incorporated based in La Crosse. So Don Weber was a Marine Corps veteran in Vietnam. When he got back from Vietnam, he lived in New England and struggled a bit. He was an infantryman and had some reintegration issues and had some transition issues and was actually homeless for a little while. But he spent the last few bucks he had in his pocket to get from Boston back home to La Crosse. And he found his passion, and his passion was starting businesses. And so he started a business in the mid-'80s, and it failed. And he started another one, and that one failed too. And he started another one, and that one failed too. And then about 15 years ago, he started a business called Logistics Health Inc. And today he has a net worth of somewhere around $3 billion. Logistics Health was just recently bought by United Healthcare. And Don Weber is leading the renaissance of downtown La Crosse and has purchased a whole bunch of property in downtown La Crosse. And that's the kind of thing that we want to draw attention to, is veterans who, you know, I may be biased, but I think we're a pretty awesome group of people. And, and you know, when we do things, it isn't just about impacting ourselves, it's about impacting those around us. So when Don Weber was successful, he looked around and said, how can I serve my community? How can I serve those around me? And he decided that he wanted to revitalize downtown La Crosse, and that's what he did. We've got stories like that across the state. We've got a different version of each one of those stories in every single community. It's just for a long time, no one's really recognized how much of an impact military service and veterans play in those stories. And so, you know, don't be afraid to share that about yourselves. Don't be afraid to share, especially as you're starting your businesses. Don't be afraid to market that and say, this is a veteran-owned business. This is a business that is owned by a veteran, is American-owned, is American-made, but is veteran-owned and veteran-made too. Actually, there's a lot of consumer research that shows that folks are about 70% more likely to patronize a business if they know that it's owned by a military veteran. And it's not just because of, you know, folks desiring to say thank you for your service or kind of wave the flag kind of stuff, although nothing wrong with patriotism, but there's very solid business cases and reasons for folks wanting to support veteran-owned businesses, and it's because the military remains one of the most trusted institutions in our society. When folks think of veterans, when folks think of the military, they think of integrity, they think of trustworthiness, they think of all those values and traits that were instilled in us as part of being in the military. And they recognize that we have a sense of service that non-veterans don't really have. And so they're drawn to, whether it's an individual consumer looking for a coffee shop, or whether it's a Fortune 500 company with a supplier diversity program that's prioritizing veteran-owned businesses. There's a real reason for folks that are looking to patronize those businesses. So that's what we're trying to do as an organization, is draw attention to and empower veterans who are looking to start their own business or have started a business and are looking to grow and are looking to be more successful. We also act as an advocate, both in public policy as well as just decision-making processes generally. We're working with the state to make the state more accessible to veteran-owned businesses for things like contracts and procurement programs. So if any of you would like to someday be part of one of the businesses, one of the thousands of businesses that the state does business with every year, there's a program now that gives you a preference over non-veteran-owned businesses. So we're kind of pioneering what that looks like and making sure that Wisconsin is leading the way in supporting veteran-owned businesses. So with that, I guess I'm going to open it up to questions. I feel like I've kind of given an overview. I don't want to repeat myself, but first, raise your hand if you have a business right now. And raise your hand if you're thinking of starting a business. Okay. For those of you that have businesses right now, can you tell me what your business? Well, give me your name, branch, and what your business is.
I'm not a veteran, but my name is Eric Pangbird, and I'm an attorney at West and Dunn.
Okay.
My name is Austin Thomas. I've started Reborn Meadery. I make meads and honey wines using local stuff.
Okay.
And I was in the Army for 9.5 years.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Lee Hansen, I own Seeds and Beans Nature Store right down the street in Washington.
Okay.
Retired Army, 23.5 years.
Okay. And Darla?
My name is Darla LeClaire. I own Basil Ishkabibel's Art Gallery and Artist Share Space, and I was in the Army.
So for you guys, can you share what some of the challenges that you experienced in starting up your business was? Some of the things that you kind of had to overcome?
I'm still jumping over a lot of hurdles. It's a business only by name.
Yeah.
I still have to work with Uncle Sam to get me a distributor's license, but
Okay.
what I have done is I've worked up getting a label for my mead. I have places where I source my ingredients from, and I have a number of taverns that are really excited to sell. I just got to get the capital to buy that distributor's license.
Okay.
So for me, I was pretty lucky because I joined a law firm first that's been in business for about 3 or 4 years. Their main office is in Madison, but the biggest challenge I've had coming back to downtown Two Rivers, where there hasn't been a law firm in almost a dozen years, is just getting it out there to the community that there is now a law firm in downtown Two Rivers. Before I opened on June 1st, we were the largest city in the state of Wisconsin that did not have a local law firm within it. So that's been the biggest challenge. I've been lucky that I didn't have to worry about financing or infrastructure, software, hardware, all that stuff, because they were provided to me. But the marketing has been the biggest challenge.
Okay. What about you, sir?
Well, the hardest thing is probably getting our name outside Two Rivers.
Mhm.
That's a big thing.
Mhm.
It's about the biggest challenge we have is
And first of all, I can relate to that just in my own experience of starting a Chamber of Commerce and getting folks to know about us as an organization, know about the resources that we have. Our resources are your products. We think about it that way. And this is where I can really attest to the impact of being part of a community and being part of organizations that help you develop relationships with other folks. You can advertise in the local paper. You can advertise on TV, although that's really expensive. You can boost posts on social media and all the rest of that stuff. But the most impactful thing that you can do to establish and grow your business and your business's brand is get to know people and get to meet them and establish those relationships. And that's where membership organizations and resources like this are really helpful. I mean, if I can give a piece of advice to everybody here, it's that you should not leave this room without getting everybody's contact information, whether that's a business card or just writing it down on a piece of paper. And every single event that you go to should be just like that. Go to every single networking event that you possibly can. I mean, one of the things I really appreciated about meeting Darla was coming to an event in Milwaukee, almost 2 hours away, and saying, I really like this. How can we get it up here? And we've been working on doing that for the last 6 months to a year. And that's really the way it happened. It wasn't because you saw an ad or because you saw something on social media. It was because we got to know each other. As business owners, taking that approach, being willing to take every single meeting that you possibly can, being willing to have coffee with folks or have a phone call with folks and introduce yourself. Sometimes there's areas where you can work together, and they're directly relevant. Sometimes you can say, you can be a customer of mine, or I can be a customer of yours. And sometimes it's not as clear. One of the things that I always point to for us, we approach our organizational model as we want to work with everybody, because there is no aspect of our lives that are not connected to and impacted by military veterans. All you have to do is search for it, and you don't have to search that hard, and it immediately becomes clear. And a perfect example of that, about 2.5 years ago, the Milwaukee Repertory Theater approached us. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, I don't have a creative or artistic bone in my body. Stick figures and chopsticks are pretty much the extent of my creative, spectrum. But they were the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, which is one of the largest regional theaters in the country. It is really an underappreciated asset, both in southeastern Wisconsin and across the state. Had a show that had a military focus. The show was about a female fighter pilot, who was injured and ended up having to give up her pilot's license and be put behind a desk. And so the whole point of the show was about this Air Force service member who was adjusting from being on the front line, so to speak, to being behind a desk. And the Repertory Theater, to their credit, reached out to us and said, we don't have any veterans on staff. We don't have any actors or performers who served in the military. We want to engage the veterans community around this. We would really like to use this as an opportunity, not just to get veterans to come to these shows, but to be a bridge between the veterans and the larger community. And of course, we jumped on to help with that. And what came out of that was now 3 years running, the only all-veteran performance art showcase in the state of Wisconsin. We teamed up with the Repertory Theater to host a show every year that's all veteran artists. They can be musicians, they can be theatrical performers, we've had authors and poets, we've had filmmakers, but the entire point of the event is to highlight the contributions that veterans make to the arts and cultural community in southeastern Wisconsin through their own original work. Now, on its face, you might think, what does a performing arts theater and a chamber of commerce have to do with one another? But because of the fact that we're a veteran organization, we were able to establish a partnership with them that continues to this day. And so, both as you're thinking about your own businesses, as well as just building kind of the business community, or rebuilding the business community in Two Rivers in northeastern Wisconsin, taking that collaborative approach, and that's not something, as an organization, we're entirely supported by our members. We don't receive charitable donations, we don't receive individual contributions. By and large, we don't charge for our programs. If there's a cost to attending our programs, it's to help us cover the cost of putting the event on. We are able to do what we do because we have the support of our members and our sponsors. At an art show, there aren't a lot of business owners that are signing up to become members, but we do it because it's important. It's important that people know that veterans contribute to the community, the communities that they live in. So that's kind of what I would, as far as bringing this all the way back around, as far as marketing goes, as far as getting your name out there, being willing to just grind it out, pound the pavement, and meet and work with everybody makes all the difference in the world. For those of you guys that are thinking of starting your businesses, can you tell me what your ideas are?
Yeah, looking at organic produce.
Okay.
More so, let's say, enough to cover my costs, maybe make a little extra money, but otherwise to help feed area, the food pantries, and
Sure.
there's a couple churches that put on meals as well.
Okay.
And as soon as you said about the veterans thing, I'm like, I know there's always plenty of veterans that need a little extra here as well.
So are you thinking of a business or a nonprofit?
It would be a business.
Okay.
And what I found out so far is land is expensive. Like ungodly amounts in this area.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are like the USDA programs, but you need to like start making money within 3 years. And if what I'm looking at doing, it's not going to be 3 years of making money right away. It'll
Sure.
take a little bit of time.
Sure.
How much land are you looking for?
Nice to have a house on it, but you can find some acres.
really excited to hear about that.
That's a huge area of interest too, just nationally, and getting veterans more tied in with agricultural careers and business ownership. There's a lot of resources about that, so we should make sure to talk before.
May I ask him what type of business he's thinking about again, please?
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. What kind of
Organic.
business?
Would you speak up?
Organic farming?
produce,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Not only vegetables, but also fruits as well.
Yeah.
And what branch of the services do you
Oh.
serve, sir?
Army.
All right.
Yeah.
That's it. Sir, did you have a question?
Go ahead, Matt.
Mark,
Mark.
Go ahead.
you aren't changing my name, are you? I'm looking at, you talked about investments. Sometimes I'll be watching Shark Tank and see some of the things I go, and the sharks, they're looking for big stuff, and they all turn it down, and I go, boy, I'd give them $20,000 if I could invest in that business.
Yeah.
Do you have something to marry somebody, that up, the entrepreneur, the small business veteran, and maybe investors, or how that works, or the legal documents that would be required
Yeah.
for something like that?
So, not sure if you're aware, but this summer, we have a Light Up the Lakeshore Business Pitch Idea Competition. It's out on Neshoda Beach.
I did see that, yep.
Yeah, so there were cash prizes awarded for anybody to come up, and it didn't even have to be a developed business plan or anything, it was just give a business idea. And, we give away thousands of dollars for that. We're planning to do more of those. BizStarts is affiliated with it, we're not running it. And in fact, what we were using this event, this monthly event for, was if we can even practice their pitch, so that they can go to these sorts of events. Right now in Appleton, the Connector event is going on, it's the Connector Con, which is also some business pitches and, access to investors. There are a number of different kinds of business incubator events around the area that they connect entrepreneurs with capital. So, yeah, stay tuned. We try to put that stuff all up on the BizStarts webpage. That's some of the stuff that I know about, and I don't pretend to know all of it, but just you just kind of tripped that trigger in my head when you said it.
Yeah. And this is kind of the role for us as well. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be able to directly invest in businesses or offer things like an all-veteran venture capital fund or start a revolving loan fund or things like that. And Wisconsin, unfortunately, is kind of struggling in terms of capital investment and investment activity generally. For veterans, one of the things that we refer folks to a lot and encourage them to look at, it's not the right fit for everyone, but the Small Business Administration, through local lenders, does offer specific loans to veteran entrepreneurs because veterans fall under a category called a disadvantaged business enterprise. Essentially, those veterans are viewed as encountering challenges that the general population does not necessarily have to encounter, and so there's things like lower interest rates, waived fees. I don't believe that there's a I can't think tonight. I don't believe that there's an initial investment with an SBA loan in the same way that other loans might be. So it's not a grant or kind of a giveaway, but it's a lower cost loan option. Wisconsin does have some other investment organizations, but just like any other organization, those folks are going to be pretty scrutinous of who they invest their capital with.
And I can tell you, Mark, I know you looked back here and said legal, we certainly have the ability at our law firm. We don't connect people together, but if you come to us, we certainly have the ability to create all types of different, whether it's gonna be a loan, buying into a business, some kind of partner who has shares in profits but doesn't share in management. There's all sorts of ways you can structure that, and we can absolutely help anybody with those types of arrangements.
Yeah. Every business owner should have 5 people around them at all times: a banker, an insurance agent, an attorney, an accountant, and a marketing resource. With those 5 things, you can answer almost every question that you might encounter. There's folks, kind of external from that, things like business coaches and others that are also really important, but those 5 things are kind of your core team, your fire team, if you will. Yes, ma'am.
What were those five?
Sure.
Thank you.
They are a banker, an insurance agent, an attorney, an accountant, and a marketing resource. It can be your staff, it can be an external firm if you want to contract it out, but those 5 things are really the core competencies of any business operation. So, just like in the military, you've got teams, and each team has a defined role. Business ownership is no different. Yes.
So in Plymouth, Wisconsin, they had, in their Chamber of Commerce, they had something they called the E-Team, which was the entrepreneur team.
Mm-hmm.
And businesses could meet with 5 representatives from those areas, and they would, and then those, you pitched for 15 minutes, and then they spent the next 45 giving you suggestions for your business.
Sure.
Does your organization have anything like that?
Not yet. So what we do have, and we unfortunately only have offer it in Milwaukee right now, although that's hopefully changing very soon. We have a program that we call Command Post. So the Command Post is both a co-working program as well as a resource and education program. We have space for 10 veteran entrepreneurs to work out of Milwaukee's kind of premier co-working space that's called Ward 4. Ward 4 is located in downtown Milwaukee. Essentially, it's a very large room with desks available, and so it's not necessarily a standalone office space. I know that there are similar co-working spaces in communities across northeastern Wisconsin, but the whole point of those types of facilities is to encourage more collaboration and have folks kind of shooting ideas off of one another, and really to give them a physical space for them to start and grow their business. For some folks, their home office or the coffee shop is sufficient for them. But some folks, outgrow that. They need a space to do things like hold meetings or hold events or hold board meetings. And so co-working spaces can be really useful as far as that goes. But also as part of that program, not only do they receive that membership at that co-working space, but they also receive ongoing business coaching and leadership coaching. So we partnered up with a veteran-owned business coaching firm based out of Elm Grove, and twice a month they come in and meet one-on-one with the entrepreneurs that are going through that program, and then ongoing leadership coaching from a veteran executive coach. So that's kind of the dedicated programs that we have for entrepreneurs. The reason that we do that is because we don't want to duplicate things that are already available. There are a lot of resources that offer what you're describing, whether it's a local chamber of commerce, whether it's organizations like BizStarts or WIBIC or others that can help connect you with some of those resources. But this is also where chambers play a really unique role, because chambers as an organization are just able to bring those folks together. I'm not going to go to you and say, as the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, I endorse, Jones, Jones, and Jones business attorneys. But I'm going to say, come to our event and meet with the dozens of attorneys that we have as part of our business community, or meet with the dozens of accountants or bankers or whichever resources you're looking for. And that's what I meant before when I said, fundamentally we're about building an ecosystem. There are all of these different resources that business owners need in order to be successful, and we are the platform that kind of brings all of those together. So our appeal is obviously very specific. It's veteran-owned and veteran-friendly businesses, right? But your local chambers of commerce, your regional economic development corporations, there are a lot of organizations that can offer some of those same functions as well. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
First gentleman back and then.
No, I didn't.
What was the 5th one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, United States Navy, Rick Hendrickson. I basically got, we do craft shows right now.
Okay.
In 6 months, we hope to expand this a little bit bigger.
Okay.
Our name is semi out there already. People know our products and they know, it's good quality and stuff, but you said you need an accountant and a lawyer and everything else.
Yeah.
Is that to draw basically so that you don't get sued or I guess?
In some cases, I mean, I'll default to the attorney in the room, but they can definitely talk about protecting yourself and business and.
Yeah, I gave a presentation, and I gave some of it here, an abbreviated form called, strategic use of professionals, and we're actually gonna do it next week in Georgia. But yeah, you want these people for a variety of reasons. Certainly, you want an attorney to avoid lawsuits. You're gonna wanna have things like an operating agreement, an employee handbook. Your insurance agents are there to protect you from people who slip and fall on your property, or if your building burns down, or someone breaks in and steals some of your equipment, all sorts of stuff. You need your accountant to make sure you're getting every penny back you can, but that you're not cheating the government, all sorts of stuff. So, and part of the presentation I'll give examples about the horrible things that we've seen go wrong because people thought they could cut corners and draft their own contract with a vendor or a customer or a partner, and it wasn't done properly, and it just results in problems down the road. So yeah, absolutely, that's a big part of why you need those professionals.
Yes.
The biggest thing is like we buy the raw materials and we make these things, and I mean, I know tax numbers and stuff like that, and that's fine, it's just, I guess, because we don't actually have a building,
Right.
we do it out of our home, but we don't sell out of our home.
Right.
They go to like Cranberry Fest or whatever. And I guess that's, when you go to places like this, you gotta have insurance policies, and we do have them from different areas. But I guess, trying to make sure that we get every bang for our buck.
Yeah.
That we're not being, I don't wanna lose money.
Right.
But I don't wanna give it all away either.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and every business is going to be different, right? There are some folks that their business they've got a full-time job and that's their career, but they have a side business. And there's folks that are looking to start their business that they hope turns into their full-time gig, so to speak. But those 5 individuals, as I said, approach it, think of it like you think about your military experience. There's a core competency involved in business ownership, even if it's something as limited as something that you do on the weekends or at different fairs or craft fairs or things like that. For an attorney, it's not just about making sure that you don't get sued, but it's also about making sure that you're protected in case somebody were to do something wrong to you, right? In the case of an insurance agent, in some cases it's a requirement, but it's also about making sure that you're not exposed and losing your personal assets or your personal resources because of something that's completely out of your control. For a banker and an accountant, as he said, it's about, number one, making sure that you're making all the money that you can, but doing it in the right way that you're not going to inadvertently violate some law. It's not about cutting corners and finding loopholes. It's about making sure that you're covering all of your bases so that you can focus on your business and you can do what you do best, which is, in your case, make wonderful products and crafts and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. I guess, my name's PJ Stevens, and I was in the Air Force for 20 years. And I am now the commander for the American Legion. So I am in a very large organization, nonprofit organization. Now that I'm the commander, I now need to see how to work on growing my Legion, becoming more part of our community, helping out fellow veterans, helping out fellow our community, and just growing as, even though it's a very large organization.
Right.
Our town is one small cell that needs to grow and needs to develop. So this would be a business organization that, I've been reaching out to, the county, I've been reaching out to our districts and such, but I need to make sure that I grow within our community.
Yeah. I mean, and just from my own personal experience, I wish VFW, Legion, DAV Post Commander had the same approach that you have, because a lot of chapters across the country, regardless of which VSO they're representing, are really struggling with that. And
Exactly.
simply the fact that you're focused on how can I grow this, how can I get our post more involved in the community is really a testament to you. So props to you. I would say that as you seem to be doing, think of it in the same way that you would think of if you're growing an growing a business, right?
Yes.
You have a large organization. Probably the closest comparison for you would be franchise ownership, right? McDonald's locations
Exactly.
are independently owned, but they're part of a large organization. They have policies and they have procedures and they have things that they need to follow.
Yes.
But one of the things for veteran service organizations, I would kind of approach it two ways. The first is, one, how do you grow your membership? And two, how do you get the community how do you get involved with and get the community more involved with what you're doing? And to answer the first question, I would go back to be deliberate about casting it as wide a net as possible. One of the things that drives me, look, I'm an Army combat vet. I've got all the boxes checked of veteran experience. I can't stand how siloed the veterans community is. I hate that there's this rivalry between the branches, between combat arms and non-combat arms, and all that stuff is nonsense.
Exactly. I agree with you 100%.
So, being deliberate about reaching out to every single veteran, no matter what they did in the military, no matter when they served, what branch they served, and making sure that you're present and that they know, because here's the thing with vets is that, especially for my generation of vets, we get out of the military, and at least in my personal experience, I didn't want to have anything to do with the military. I grew out my hair really long, I grew a big long beard, and didn't want to have anything to do with the military. And then about 2.5 years later, I got to the point where I needed some support. I needed the veteran service organizations, and I needed the folks that could help me with my disability claim and get me into the VA and provide me with that social network of folks.
And that's what I would like to develop as the American Legion, is to be a resource to know for people to come, oh, there's a American Legion post and so is a member, but I need to know, how to get transportation. I need how to get housing. I need how to get a job.
Yeah.
I need to know. And the thing is that I want our organization, our post for Two Rivers, to develop the knowledge and the resources to provide to our fellow veterans in our community and beyond.
Right. So, it's easier said than done, and it seems really fundamental, but for a veteran service organization, being present at everything that you possibly can, that's going to pay dividends down the road. And that's not saying you go to every resource fair and everybody that comes up to the table say, are you a member yet, are you a member yet, are you a member yet? It's making sure that they know that those resources are available to them, so that when and if they need it, they know exactly where to go. But I would suggest reaching out to some of the business resources and coming up with a business plan for the American Legion post in Two Rivers. Think about, what's your unique value proposition? Why should I, as a veteran, go to the American Legion post as opposed to the VFW post, as opposed to the DAV post? Maybe I benefit from all three.
Or the MVets.
Or MVets, right. Maybe I benefit from going to all of them, but why should I turn to the American Legion? Why should I go to the event that's being held at the Legion post, during the week? Or why should I go to the post meetings? What's the value for me as a quote unquote consumer, right? And this is true for every single entrepreneur. The best entrepreneurs and the best business owners and the folks that are successful either are doing something that no one has done before or are doing it better. If you're doing something that someone else has already done before and they're doing it better than you are, then go work for them and learn how they do it, and then do it better than they do. But if you can't articulate what your value is, whether to a customer or whether to a member of your post, there's going to be a disconnect that you can't bridge there. but think about, you know, a marketing plan for your post. Think about what are the community organizations and community events that we need to make sure that we are at so that folks know that we're here as a resource. How do we get the business community more involved? You know, how do we connect with colleges and universities and community colleges and technical schools? Because 70% of veterans who are leaving the military today are using their education benefits and going back to school. So how do you connect with those folks? Especially in that transition period where, you know, we just statistically, you know, within that 3 to 5 year window coming out of the military, that's when folks are going to need you. So how do you make sure that you connect with them right on, early on, so that when they do hit those kind of pivot points, they know to reach out to you? Yes, sir.
That was basically my question, not the business side, but the apprenticeship side, sending the kids to trade schools. When I got out of the service in Ron Gordon, United States Army, 65 to 68, I got out, I started an apprenticeship for $1.67 an hour in a tool and die trade. But if it wouldn't have been for veteran benefits to cover some of my costs for tools and whatnot and schooling, I probably couldn't have got married and kept going.
Right.
But what does the Chamber of Commerce, the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, what are they doing to promote apprenticeships in the trades?
Our approach with workforce development is fairly unique because we looked around and said there's a lot of resources out there for individual veterans. It's very different today separating from the military because you go through, it's not what it should be, but you go through kind of a employment boot camp. You learn how to do things like write a resume. You learn about career opportunities that are out there. You take career aptitude tests. And so we looked around and said there's a lot of places that veterans can go to learn about the careers that are available to them. There's a lot of things like career fairs and job fairs, you know, someplace that a veteran can go to get their resume reviewed. We don't want to duplicate that. We would rather send those individual veterans to those resources. Our approach is working on the other side of that equation because we looked around and we said there are a lot of employers who are looking to hire veterans, but they're nowhere near prepared to actually be a veteran-friendly employer. A lot of employers don't know what it means to be a sergeant in the Army or a technical sergeant in the Air Force or a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. They don't know how to translate those skills in that training into a civilian context. And so we've developed programming that kind of has a train the employer model to teach them, here's how you actually, first of all, here's how you find and recruit veterans, because it's not as simple as just sending a job opening to the one veteran that you know and saying, go find me somebody like you. There's actual strategies and investments that need to occur for folks to attract veterans to apply for jobs. How do you interview and onboard veterans as employees? How do you make sure that you're not duplicating their training? So in your case, you know, if there's somebody who has sufficient training through their military experience, why are they going through and paying for, or the government is paying for, the same training that they've already received?
That's just like truck drivers and
right. There's
that's happening now.
There's very specific skills. You know, if somebody was a medic or, you know, somebody who worked in a medical MOS in the military, you know, they shouldn't have to necessarily take biology 101 to duplicate what they already know. So that's kind of our approach. You know, and we frankly got to that point based on experience, and this is something that I think you'll find in your business ownership or community organization leadership as well, which is when I first started this organization, we hosted networking events. And then because we found out that folks were really looking for opportunities to meet with other veterans in a professional context to learn other resources that were available to them. And then we found out that folks were looking for more educational programming, so we developed that. And then we found out that folks were looking to hire veterans, but the first thing that, you know, when folks would approach us and say, hey, we're looking to hire veterans, and we would ask them, all right, so what are you doing? We would often get blank stares of, you know, what do you mean, what are we doing? Veterans don't just magically show up on our doorstep. And we had, you know, there's one story that I really like to tell because it really exemplifies, I think, the challenges that veterans face in today's workforce, which is very unique from folks who served in Korea or Vietnam or Cold War era or Gulf War I. We had a 20-year Army NCO. He actually, his last station was in HR command. He worked in recruiting command. He worked in recruiting and HR for the military. If there's anybody who had a leg up on that transition experience and job searching experience, it was this guy. But he interviewed with a really large employer in southeastern Wisconsin. And he thought he knocked it out of the park. He thought he just crushed the interview. And they ended up going with another candidate. And so, like any good job seeker, he followed up with his interviewer and said, do you have any tips? Do you have any suggestions on what I should do differently down the road? And their answer was really interesting. They said, we asked you all of these questions, and every answer you gave started with we. We did this, we did that, here's what we accomplished. And we were looking for what you individually did. And that tells me that that interviewer has never spent more than 5 seconds with anybody who served in the military, because that's not a semantic difference to us. Our brains don't work that way. From the very moment that you report at boot camp or basic training or whatever you went to, you're conditioned to think you are part of a team, you're part of a unit, you're not an individual. And there's that cultural disconnect that really plays out when it comes to employment and workforce development. You know, another example is folks that we have worked with, and I mean, they're recently separated and transition veterans, but their resumes are squared away, they're prepared, they are, you know, trained for the job that they're applying for, they would be fantastic employees, and they go into a job interview, and the only point of reference that they have for a job interview is a promotion board. Has anyone here been to a promotion board? So if you haven't been to a promotion board, it's meant to throw you off your game, right? It's an intimidating experience. You're sitting across the table from your first sergeant, your sergeant major, and all of these folks who are 6 or 8 levels above you, and you are trained to answer the questions that they ask you, very short, sweet, to the point. Yes sir, yes ma'am, no sir, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir, right? If you go into a job interview and behave that same way, they're going to get a very different idea of what you bring to the table as an employee. And these are just things that, you know, if you're a 24-year-old HR assistant who just graduated with their bachelor's degree and they don't know anybody who served in the military, they don't have a parent or a spouse or a sibling who served in the military, they have no familiarity with the military culture, they would have no way of knowing that, right? So all of this is a really long way of kind of coming around and saying, this is why we do what we do, is try to steer folks toward, you know, obviously with veterans, the reason I started this was because I was looking for my own career guidance. I was looking for, what do I do when I get out of school? And we certainly offer mentorship and pair folks up with appropriate, you know, whether it's through the skilled trades, whether it's through apprenticeship programs, technical schools, sometimes it's community colleges, sometimes it's four-year colleges. But our real focus is how do we make sure that every single employer in the state of Wisconsin is actually veteran-friendly and veteran-ready. That they know not only how to recruit veterans and what it means to have a workplace culture that's accepting and friendly towards vets, but also that there are not barriers in their own employment process that are keeping qualified and, you know, ideal candidates out the door because of misunderstandings or cultural differences. So, you know, and that's what's really kind of evolved from our organization is, and what makes us different from a local chamber of commerce, right? Because we have the unique distinction of being both a veteran organization and a business organization. And so our focus and our mission is anytime that those two seemingly disparate or disconnected circles intersect, anywhere in that Venn diagram that those two have common issues, that's where we step in. And that's where we offer support. And it really comes down to, again, making the value proposition. We're not a charity. We are here as a business organization so that every single one of our business members increases revenue or cuts their cost. If we haven't done that at the end of the day, then we are not delivering a value for our members. And so we take the approach of let's explain to employers the actual case for hiring veterans. Yes, it's the right thing to do. Yes, these folks volunteer and serve their country and they deserve a career. but it's actually good business for you. Veterans are more productive, they're more loyal, they're higher performing than their peers, and they bring to the table the skills that you're looking for. And up until in some cases, no one has actually made that case. So that's our goal as an organization. Yes, sir.
Hey Todd, my name's Chris DeCoke, and I'm a Navy veteran back 88, 84. Matter of fact, I think today, Mark, isn't the Beirut bombing today? Anyways, I have 2 boys in the military right now, and one of them, he's always passionate about opening his own shop. He's an avid surfer and stuff like that. I think he's nuts. But
You and my parents probably have a lot in common.
I mean, I enjoyed it too when I was younger, but I was like, but he's really good. He actually still does it. He's 32. Anyways, if I was to give him advice, as the one thing that he should really look into before even talking about opening a business, I have no idea. I mean, I had my own business, was a snowplowing business. But I gave that up because my wife pleaded with me to give it up because it's hard on you. But anyways, if I had to give him one bit of advice, what would be the best thing that he could do to see if he's got what it takes to cut the mustard for business in his own? I mean, he might get a different job, but have this as a passion, something done on the side. But I mean, he was just surfing on Sunday. I think he's nuts.
My advice for him or for any of you would be talk to a current business owner who started and grew their business. I can tell you from the nonprofit side, it is the hardest thing and the most rewarding thing, but honestly the hardest thing that you will ever do. You will work 90 to 100 hours a week, you will have sleepless nights, you will worry about making payroll or paying the bills or any of those other things. So if he's really serious about starting a business, he needs to talk to somebody who's been through that grind and can say, here's what I did to overcome it.
So while he's still in the service, is there like an educational something he should look into or anything like that, like a business degree? Or I mean, I don't see that happening. He's got 3 kids, and
you don't necessarily. I mean, education's important, and if you can, if you have the ability to get something like a MBA or a business administration degree, that's great. Luckily, there's a lot of resources out there that bring a lot of those topics and content down to earth. You don't need to go and get a 4-year degree. Things like the SBDC or BizStarts or WIBIC or a lot of resource organizations can offer a lot of that content for no cost or low cost. For him, I mean, as I said before, there's a huge difference between having a passion for something and actually being able to be a successful business owner in that topic. Right, and so for him to know, here's what I'm good at and here's what I'm bad at, and be able to kind of build a team to complement those things. For me, I'm not a finance person. I hate accounting, I hate math. I absolutely love what I do, but one of the things that I just really struggle with is the accounting side of my business. So one of the first things I did was find somebody who that's their jam. They really enjoy numbers, and they make sure that my books are straight. They make sure that we're paying our bills on time, and we have revenue coming in, we have cash flow, and all the things that you need to worry about as an organization. I really like doing program development. That's my passion. I like identifying issues that need a solution and developing programs to help with that. And so that's what drew me into what I'm doing now. But nobody has all the answers. So for him, he might be the best surfer in the world. But if he doesn't know how to make sure how to do QuickBooks, if he doesn't know what marketing is, if he doesn't know how to do a SWOT analysis, things like that are really just fundamental aspects of business operations, he's really going to struggle. Yes, ma'am.
SCORE is another resource if he were to go on the SCORE website and just spend time watching their videos, reading their content, it would be like going to school, because I did that first and then I went to school, and that's why I
What is
did
SCORE?
that.
Yeah. SCORE is it's an
Um,
acronym, Service Corps of Retired Executives?
Yes.
Is that, yes.
It's part of the Small Business Administration.
Yes. So it's an all-volunteer organization. They put on events, educational events. They also have mentorship programs with existing business owners who can kind of provide some ongoing guidance.
It's SCORE, and they, at least in Sheboygan County, they had local retired people who, someone thinking of a business idea one-on-one.
And just two other resources locally. So BizStarts itself, one of our starting premises was we wanted to be able to match people with mentors. So we're partnered with the Two Rivers Main Street Association. And again, depending on the kind of business, but to talk to somebody that's in the trenches and does this stuff, we have the capability to do some matching from that perspective. And then also Progress Lakeshore down in Manitowoc, they have an entrepreneurship program. It's low cost. I think it's like $200 or something. It is a several week intensive kind of program to give you the basics.
I just want to mention too, Bunker Labs.
Yep. Bunker Labs is another organization that they offer programming across the state, things like networking events, educational presentations, and they're like us, focused on, they're not exclusive to, but they're focused on veterans and military families. And we work with them very closely.
You said something about SWAB? What is that?
SWAT. So SWAT is a
Spell it, please.
SWOT. So it's a strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Essentially, you draw a grid, 4 boxes, and you see what are the strengths that I have as either an individual or as a business. What are the weaknesses I have as an individual or a business? Where are the opportunities for me to grow and throw my shoulder into? And where are the threats to me as an individual or as a business? So things like your local competition. You probably have more insight on SWOT analysis than I do. But.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of the tools that's available. It's a pretty common one that people use when they're thinking about, is this the right business for me, or where I am with my business right now, what do I need to take as next steps. There's also the business planning canvas, which is a great tool to start thinking about what's my business about, how am I marketing it, who's my customer, what are my costs. It's like a nice, rather than a formal business plan, what we're seeing a lot more these days is more of a business canvas, which is kind of like a one-page placemat, where you're sort of filling in the details about your business, and you use it as kind of an operating document.
Right. And a lot of just local business resources will have resources on this stuff. We talked about a lot of them, SCORE and Bunker Labs and BizStarts. Another one to look into would be the Small Business Development Center. I think the closest one is at NWTC, possibly UW-Oshkosh, but each UW or college, they're located on college campuses. And they have a lot of classes that are available either for low cost or no cost to entrepreneurs. And all of this, to get back to your question, sir, there's, this is all a really good example. There's a difference between having a passion and running a successful business. And you need to have the business side, the business case firmed up before you jump into it. Just being passionate about something, unfortunately, is not necessarily the only secret sauce. If you're going to own a business, you better be passionate about it. Otherwise, that grind is going to be a lot less enjoyable. But if you don't have any of the technical knowledge that I talked about earlier of how to own and operate and grow and scale your business, it's going to make that failure a lot more likely. I won't say it's guaranteed, but it's a lot more likely. Any other questions? I think I've got about 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so the SWOT, back to that again. So S is for strength, W is for weakness, and then what's the O and the T stand for?
Opportunity.
And threat.
And you want to think of those as internal and external, what you control and what you can't control. So the strengths and weaknesses are your internal, within your power, and it's your own assessment, and the opportunities and threats are things external forces.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
Cool.
in the case of a Legion post, think of strengths and weaknesses as things that the Legion does or doesn't do, and think of opportunities and threats as things that others do or don't do. Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a question?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I was gonna ask you where I can get the, reference so that I can find out where all these, I'm new here. We've been in Wisconsin since, early August. We're learning our way around, so I need to find where all these places are. Do you have, any resources like that?
I'm sure that Todd and that the BizStarts folks have some of those for you. You can also check out our website, wyveteranschamber.org. We have and I'll leave some cards with all of that and make sure that folks send it out to you. But we have a resource directory on our website. We also have a business directory that's searchable by both business type as well as geography. So if you are looking for a local attorney who is veteran-owned or veteran-friendly, you can find that through our website. If you're looking for an accountant who is veteran-owned or veteran-friendly, you can find that through our website. So definitely leverage that and take advantage of it. Anything else? Yep.
I just wanted to see how we can combat something that PJ mentioned, trying to grow it. I think where you lose it for the service organizations is the facility is going away.
Sure.
And we used to have a Legion post here, and it's not unique to this community. They're all over. They're losing their presence in the community because they can't say, well, we're right there on Main Street, or that's where we meet on this day, because it's gone because of, membership drops and finances drop.
I'll tell you, and this is certainly my own experience, so this doesn't necessarily translate, but for our experience, we never hold events in the same location. I wouldn't say never. We have very rarely held events in the same location. We always leverage, we reach out to businesses and restaurants and, bars and folks that have community space like this. As long as you have the ability to communicate with your members, and sometimes that's mail, sometimes that's over the phone, but I'll speak for myself. I don't pick up the phone for numbers that I don't recognize. I rely on email and texting, and that's just a generational thing, right? I have younger siblings, they probably use Snapchat or something, I don't know what the kids are doing, but everybody has different models, modes that they prefer to communicate in. So as long as, and that's what we've done as an organization. We have a huge email list that we rely on. Darla, you probably get, I don't know, dozens of emails from us a week. But we have social media. We have, and these are the things that, thinking about a veteran service organization as a business, do you have,
Yes,
use
I am
that,
leveraging it.
Use that not only to communicate with your members, but to promote what you're doing.
Matter of fact, 3 days ago, I finally set up my email list of people that I do have emails for.
Yeah.
That's how I got the information out to.
For this?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I did not call him. I did not tell him. It was through email that he got the communication.
And there are some folks that they don't, we get folks all the time who say, we don't email. And for me, that's something I can't envision, but I understand for them, that's what they're used to. So when we hold events, we make sure that we call them and we let them know, here's where our event is going to be next month. Or, we will send them a letter or a flyer in the mail, because that's how they're used to getting information. And this is true of all, veteran nonprofit organizations too. We need to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at, right? It would be great if everybody used the same uniform method of communication. It would make our lives a whole lot easier. But since we're here to serve them, we've got to adjust and adapt to what they need. So in some cases that's mail, in some cases it's phone, in some cases it's email, in some cases it's social media. It just depends on. It depends on what you have the capacity to do, but also thinking about, as you structure the organization from an operations sense, how much do you have someone that you can say, all right, here's our list of folks that need to be called for a meeting at Joe's Pub this month. Can you, take an hour and go through and call these folks? Or we need somebody to stuff envelopes and address and make sure that things get in the mail. It's all about, for business ownership or nonprofit management, it's all about creating processes that you can replicate over and over. So setting those up, and it's not that different from the military, right? Military, you're taught to have that process because something, if something happens to somebody else needs to fill into that, right away and keep the engine going, so to speak. Business is the same way. We're an organization. So if you, for whatever reason, tomorrow are no longer the post commander, can somebody come in and pick up and make sure that your post is still serving your members? So think about, and that's where approaching it from kind of a business mentality can really be helpful. All right. I think that's about my time, huh?
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let's give everybody
And if any of you happen to be interested in help with your marketing, your digital marketing, that's what I do for a living. So you've got a great lawyer in the back of the room, and we can be at least 2 parts of those 5 people that you need. What were the 5 again? Pop quiz.
Bank, insurance, attorney, accountant, marketing.
So anyways, thank you so much for coming tonight. Really appreciate all the questions. Hope to see you at future events. And I hope to hear about your businesses that you're trying to get off the ground too. All right.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to get some footage.
We're going to do the roving camera.
Yeah.
I got to say hi to PJ.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
Hey, when is your kid getting out?
I don't think he is getting out for a while yet. I think he's got 8 years to go, but he's
Okay.
talking about even opening this up on the side.
Yeah. So you want to open this up something back here?
Hi.
I'll have your document very soon.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah. Lots and lots of
I have 1. And you asked first, so you can have it.
And cut.